Sorry.
Take that again, yeah.
Yeah.
3, 2, 1, and go.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the Aleph Podcast. Today we have the man who's basically been shaping the sound of Pakistani indie music for the last few years, and now even beyond indie. Adeel Tahir.
Thank you for having me, man.
And
it's a pleasure to be here. This place has been a home to me, so
yes,
it's always comfortable. It's always nice. It's always nice to talk.
We've worked a lot together. For those who don't know, Adeel has been the main engineer at Aleph throughout pretty much since COVID times, and recently has moved on to do more freelance work, but we continue to work together on projects. But yeah, I guess I want to start a bit with a bit about how you got into the industry and your earlier days, and with your background. You're one of the few people who's actually studied audio.
Yeah,
that's involved in audio.
It's actually very interesting because even though there was some thought behind it, but like mostly it shaped out of luck.
Yeah.
Because I didn't expect to do exactly what I'm doing right now, even though when I set out as a student, like back when I was 17, 18, my brother asked me, he's like, what do you want to do? I'm like, oh, I think I can do this audio sound thing. He's like, what are you going to do like after that? What are you going to work as? And as a kid, I was just like, okay, maybe I'll have a studio and I'll produce bands, Even then I was just like, oh, that's so far-fetched, you'll never get there. And he encouraged me, and I worked hard, and I ended up going to this magnificent school back in Canada, Vancouver Film School, studied sound design for film and games. So a lot of it was extensive as well. It was like a complete year, and went from knowing nothing about film sound or game to being completely certified, being able to do anything that an industry professional would. I worked there for a couple of years, started realizing that maybe film isn't where I want to be entirely. Yeah. I enjoy the work as it is with all audio, right? But doing that full time was draining me creatively in some ways, because it always felt like I wasn't able to tell the stories I wanted to, perhaps. Film being way more saturated as well is harder. I took a vacation, came back to Pakistan, and somehow people started contacting me for work. Same thing, still doing film, still doing a lot of sound design, still doing post-production, still on set.
Yeah.
I've done, I don't know, I think 40, 50 short films and TV shows and stuff like that over the years. So did some of that, but then again I was starting to feel like it wasn't what I want to do.
Yeah.
Got a bit of a job at Coke Studio for the 2 years Strings was doing it. This was 2016 and 17. Same year I came back, and the year after. And after that I was like, okay, I need a break from film, I need a break from companies, I need a break from just working in that regard. I need to figure out what I really want to do. Joined a band, did that for a while, and I realized I want to produce music because in just the few months I had that band, it was Shajar, by the way, I realized that I'm not as good as I thought I was when it comes to audio. And I went through all the basics again, started studying again essentially on my own this time. And I think my first project at that time that I guess was for a client was Gentle Robot, Slow.
Yeah.
And that hit off very well, and from there to now it's been just hundreds of songs.
Yeah. I remember when so Gentle Robot is this great project by Ibrahim, who used to be in the band Taka Tak.
And Kira
Makora, yeah. But Ibzi, as you call him, he really hit upon a really interesting sound. And I remember when Slow came out, it was just this is some really cool stuff. And it was mixed well, and it just sounded like, a cut above other stuff that was happening in the indie scene at the time. Even really cool video to go with it.
Yeah, it that entire project was just happened. I contacted Ibsi. I was just like, I want to work with you. I love your stuff, and I want to mix for people. I want to produce for people. He's like, yaar, bass bhi baja de. And I'm like, yeah. Oh, so Ibrahim Imdad, he's an amazing musician. levels above like people like me, and for him to trust me to play bass was a big deal. But he loved what I did, and it was a very nice project. We went from he had most of the stuff done. He asked me to add some more production stuff like within the drums and stuff, some synthy type layers. Played the bass. In that time, he wrote the lyrics, and he did the vocals in his bedroom on a SM58.
Yeah.
And just sent it through, and that was it. We
Nice.
mixed it in a day, mastered it in a day.
Nice.
He had the video done while I was mixing it. It was up.
Nice. Very good. But I remember before any of this, though, you also worked with Natasha Homera.
Yes, that was a very extensive thing, and it wasn't even like limited to one thing. She's like an older sister to me, so like we ended up just working since I came back from Canada.
Yeah.
You know, she had me doing sound for her band for quite a while.
Yeah.
I filled in as a keyboard player, which I'm horrible at. I'm not a keyboard player. I've played bass for her, a lot of sound stuff. We've worked on separate projects. We've done electronic music collaborations. You know, a lot of my background is from electronic music, and that's why we fit together a lot.
Yeah.
Just constant stuff like I think the last project we even did was just this improv electronic music session. Just got all our toys together in Lahore and just did some stuff.
Nice.
So years of that as well.
Yeah. So, you know, I've watching you from afar initially, I thought, you know, you had a lot of experience with, because for the most part, indie stuff in Pakistan is recorded with, you know, as you said, 58 in a bedroom, in a closet, whatever. So basically very compromised source material.
Yeah,
you know?
At times extremely.
So I think that makes people like you, and to some extent I've had that experience as well, you know, we become experts at solving those kind of problems, and less time is spent on actual mixing.
Yeah.
And it can also get quite frustrating. So how was it to make the shift from doing all that to coming in here and working on like Mahal, for example, Irfan's album?
So I remember like for years and years, the things that I was focusing on when mixing was a lot of fixing and how do you get this thing to not sound that way, or like, you know,
how do you get a real drum kit sound out of
not
a terribly
not
recorded
even
drum
that,
kit?
like the amount of times I've just gotten really bad vocals, right? Drums,
Yeah.
something you can do, whatever, but vocals you just can't repair.
Yeah.
Once the vocal quality goes down, every listener can actually pick up on the fact that it doesn't
It's the
sound
most
right.
afraid thing in
Yeah.
mix, right?
And everybody listens to the vocals, they're listening to the words, they're listening to that quality, whatever.
Yeah.
But I kept digging into that, and that actually like polished my audio skills more than my creative skills for sure. And coming here, I was able to dial that technical side back while also maintaining it, obviously, because it's such a state-of-the-art place. Like, we have everything we needed. Once I came here, I was just like a kid in a playground. I was like, oh my god, so many toys.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the cool thing about having you here especially was, you know, I'm not a full-time audio engineer. I would say I'm more a producer and mix engineer, but from the sense of putting up mics and figuring out the best positions and the best places to put amps or instruments, I have an idea from everything that I've seen, but I'm not the guy who tinkers around. So I had some basic things in mind when I built the place, that drums will be there, you know, guitars can be here, this and that. But when you came here, we started experimenting.
Yeah.
We put drum kits
I
in
started
different
experimenting
places.
myself. I mean, I didn't know these rooms that well. I mean, we've been working here for years now.
Yeah.
Like, Tamasha's Paisa Pek was done here. The
Yeah.
Takatak album was done here. So I was involved in both of those projects.
Yeah.
So I had an idea of how things sounded in here, but I didn't know if I like did something ridiculous, what that would result in, right? Like, putting the drums here wasn't something we used to do before, and I started enjoying it a lot because of this openness and the wooden flooring over here. It was very nice. Started using all sorts of equipment that I think you just bring out of the storage. You'd be like, hey, we also have this.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, whoa, okay, you know what? Let's just try that out. Why not?
Yeah.
We would always get what was essential in any recording, but we would also go above and beyond to just.
Yeah,
learn
like
what
for
the song
example,
was
when
about.
we added the extra door out here, and this became like a crush mic drum chamber.
It became a reverb room. It was it was the realest reverb we could capture over here. So I started just getting that, and that was actually a very recent thing we did. I think it was like 6 months ago or something.
Yeah.
Before that, I would utilize something like using some of the rooms over there, but they're not as bright and reverberant because they're treated. That's just a mini chamber.
Yeah, and it makes things sound massive.
Yeah, it's reverb. It's
Exactly.
really nice.
And then I think, well, there was a bit of a gap in us working together in the middle. But then when you came back with, I think Naqab Posh,
That was the first thing we did last year.
you know, I had heard some tracks that were out, and I had met Amar a couple of times. I knew you were playing with them, and I was a big fan of Arsul, who I knew was playing drums with the band. So I was just like, we should do a live session, capture this rock, live energy. And so that was really cool doing that. That came out really nice.
Yeah, that was actually the first thing I got involved with in audio and Aleph when I joined full time. Before that, I didn't even know what we were gonna do. Arsul called me up one day. He's like, "Hey, you wanna play bass with this band? It's like, it's your sound. You'll kind of know what to do." And I was like, "Okay, let's see." Played with them. You invited us. We did that thing, and I think it was a weekend. We didn't even start the post production on that work.
Yeah.
And I ended up just joining here full time, and that was the first edit or the first mix I did over here. Right after that, you guys handed me Irfan's Mahal.
Yes.
And that's when I really got to play around with all of the equipment in a mix stage, which is, like not something I still get to do as much.
Yeah, I mean, where did you get the idea to use guitar pedals and printing tones?
I don't know. I did that at home quite a bit because I would have some pedals when I was playing bass more often, like a few years ago.
Yeah.
So I just...
So you used to do this in post-production?
Yeah, I would just like throw like samples through my distortion pedals, because now you can get a lot of nice amps and distortion sounds in the box.
Yeah.
But like 6 years ago even, I don't think these plugins were doing or anything close to what they're doing right now. So even then I would like prefer like a crappy Boss overdrive pedal through anything software was giving me at that time. So that's when I started doing that, and over here you have like 200 pedals, I don't know, right? And we started mixing it out, and I figured we have a reamp box, so I just picked up all the pedals I could in one arm, well, in both arms, and just dragged them down here, put them on, ran drums through distortion boxes, ran vocals through like all sorts of modulation effects. The Strymon pedals were great for that.
Yeah.
Which one is that? The one that has all the tremolo and all the modulation?
The Mobius.
The Mobius. I really like that. And the thing that stands out the most for me was the one I used on drums, the Marshall amp box thing.
Yeah, you used the it's a Keeley Marshall in a box.
Yeah, there's like two different amp types.
Models. Yeah.
No, that was great. That was the thing that like really got those drums to sound tight, but still like.
So you used that on snares?
Yeah. Snare. I think it was also the side snare mic. Not really a side snare. It's just distant, right? So that's great because it picks up so much of the entire kit, and it's centered. The hi-hat gets to be like a little more centered. It's dirty as hell, and it fills out all that mid area, because I think a lot of the miking over here is done that way before I was here as well, where we'd place the mics in stereo fashion, but like on a distance pair,
right?
Not XY, not MS, stuff like that. So creates like a weird hole in the middle. So a crush mic like that helps a lot fill out that center.
Yeah.
So the pedals work great for it, and I loved that so much that I was just like, okay, I'm gonna do this on all the songs on this album.
Yeah, it worked out really nice. I mean, that album has a very unique sound, everything from the way it's been put together, arrangement wise, songwriting wise, and as we're talking about how it's been mixed.
For me, that was the inspiration. The music was so fresh to me. I didn't have any rules in my head. I remember like being a little stressed, like when I first got like the chance to work on it. I was like, okay, so this is extremely unique and sounds a very specific way, but how do I bring that out without like turning it into anything else I've mixed? Right. I started Googling how to mix soft brush drums and stuff like that. I mean, I barely got anything from that, but I sat down trying to like really imagine what the sound is. It was a very cool record. The guitar sounds are amazing on that. I think the Fender Twin was used for that,
Yeah,
right?
it's a Fender Deluxe. It's like a solid state version of a Fender Twin
Yeah.
from the 80s, I think. I got that from Bilal Nasir Khan.
Ah.
You know, when he wrapped up his studio, he had a bunch of things that he was looking to offload, and that's one thing.
And that was a great amp. It sounded like awesome, and the way Anas used his tones were just like almost like keyboards.
Yeah.
And
very
that's when I was
much.
like, okay, so everything that I've thought about guitar goes out the window as well.
Yeah.
It was really nice.
And so what was your approach as for the flute stuff?
That was straight
Because
up
to
like,
me it sounds very Jethro Tull.
yeah,
how it's
that's
come out.
exactly what I was gonna say. That the second I heard that, I was like, oh, Jethro Tull. I know what to do. I know how it's supposed to sound. I don't even remember what I did to it specifically.
But you had
Because-
this image in your sonic image in your head already.
Yeah, right away. I've heard flute in prog rock for so long.
Yeah.
For so long, like just loved it. And I think like the start of Takhela,
Mhm.
you know, there's like that small passage that's going on. That's just
Yeah.
an ambient thing. I have a feeling I like grabbed some of the flutes from one other song. I think Shaan tuned it to the key, just stretched them out and did like weird layers of that as well.
That's interesting. I don't know that.
Got to do. I did that with the vocals as well at some point. I don't know. I
Yeah.
just play around with weird things at times.
Yeah.
That album gave me that option, and it was the first time I actually remember doing a hybrid mix, like really a hybrid mix, because did the digital side on my system,
Yeah.
and then I took it to Studio A where all the
We've
analog gear
got
is.
all the hardware. Yeah.
Yeah, the summing, the saturation boxes, the EQs, the
Yeah.
compressors, we used everything on that.
Yeah. I mean, was that your first time mixing through hardware?
No, I've had a decent chance of mixing some stuff with a 4000G, I believe.
Okay,
But it was
back in Vancouver.
Yeah, it was modded with the E chips, I believe, on the EQ section, but I'm not sure.
Mhm.
I've used I'm not sure it was. I don't know. It was a Focusrite console. It was a very beautiful sounding one that I got to record drums on directly.
Nice.
It was very nice. It had good channel strip. Believe it had. It had everything you'd need in a channel strip. Like
Yeah.
nothing was missing on it, so I got like perfect sounds out of that.
Yeah.
But I remember using the 4000 for like orchestral stuff, which is
Hmm.
not usual. But got to mix on it.
I mean, given that you've had that, you know, experience working with this kind of gear and, you know, been in studios in Canada and stuff, and obviously we're lucky, we're in an era where software is getting so much better, so you could argue to some extent the fact that we don't have so much hardware things available here in Karachi or Pakistan doesn't become as much of an impediment.
Absolutely.
Because even producers abroad are just doing things in the box
Exactly.
a lot of the
Yeah.
time. But having said that, what would you say is the main things you miss from that environment
From
in
an analog
Canada where
Mhm.
everything is available and it's all, you know, pro?
So I will also like blame myself for like some of the opinion I have for it, because you know I was much younger. I was 21, 22 at that time. I wasn't all that experienced, so I was obviously not recording to the quality I would even on a much lesser like studio and equipment, right? So there's that, but I obviously saw something that like it makes my life easier in post-production. I have all the sounds that I would want.
Yeah.
If I have something that's like extremely digital sounding or, you know, just clean,
Yeah.
essentially, then there's a lot more I have to do to get it to where I would expect the recording to be.
Yeah, like you're talking about working here.
Yeah, working here, working in places that have like that utilize a lot of analog equipment. But when it comes to the mix, I think I'm happy doing it all in the box, honestly. But there's certain equipment that just hasn't been modeled
Yeah.
or hasn't been modeled correctly yet,
Yeah.
or doesn't give what I just expect from it. A lot
There's
of
a weight that's missing sometimes.
Yeah, it's just not the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, like if I can replace it, happy to replace it.
Yeah.
But if I can't, I can't. Like the VSM over here, I remember I used it, and then I went back to the plugin version, then I went back to this one, and then I went back to the plugin version. It took a little back and forth on that. The same with the API EQs.
Yeah.
There's a great plugin company, Lindell Audio,
Yeah.
that like I think they're through Plugin Alliance now,
Yeah.
and they have a really good API module lab.
Yeah.
So I've been using that. That made my need to not use this as much like better, because again, recalling analog, trying to
It is a
like
long-
log that, it takes quite a bit. So I try to minimize it now, considering the amount of mixes I have to do a day.
Yeah.
You know, like right now I'm doing about 2 to 3 mixes a day minimum. On any other given day where I'm actually in the studio, and that's a lot. If I start logging and recalling that, I think I will lose my brain.
Yeah, and you're doing all kinds of genres as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to tear down like my studio a lot and try different things for every project.
Yeah.
So trying to recall that stuff gets a little tedious, and the other route would be to just use it like in a very set and forget kind of manner, you know.
Yeah, I mean, if you're Chris Lord Alge, who has 10 1176s, one for each
And like
kind of sound.
Yeah,
right?
and 3 mix assistants that are just standing there patching everything as needed if
Yeah.
needed. But yeah, that happens. But again, I think in the recording stage, it's too important to like have like everything you want right then and there.
Yeah.
Recording the exact sound you want that you don't want to like recreate later. You know, there's so much that you just capture then, just take it.
Absolutely, and I think we really, you know, with working in a lesser kind of environments or with, you know, lesser gear available, you often don't realize how much it impacts you from the performer standpoint, like to have a sound the way you want it while you're recording it. Makes people play better.
Absolutely.
Makes their performances better,
Absolutely.
tighter, more inspired. Whereas a lot of the time nowadays we're just working with DIs and we're asked to imagine what it's going to sound like. And it's just not the same thing.
Even if I do the DI route now, right? Like I've seen people just be like, yeah, we're going to work with this tone and then we'll change it up later. And I'm like, but that will absolutely impact the playing, the emotion that like the artist is putting into there.
Yeah, and like if you're talking about a live rock band, for instance, if the drummer is hearing back you know, a guitar tone that's not really inspiring, is not going to hit the snare as hard as you would.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, or as consistently. Or
same goes for the vocalist, right? And it's almost like monitoring. Like if
Yeah.
you don't hear the click loud enough or whatever, right, you're not going to play it on time.
Yeah.
So same things goes if you're not hearing the right thing at the right intensity, whatever it is, right? It just doesn't give you what you would expect. As a musician, even if I can, I'd prefer having like a complete mix of the song in my ears.
Yeah.
You know, like as if I'm listening to the music because I respond to it better. I play better. I enjoy it more. I move around more. You know, if you have you'll see people on stage, and you'll see them, you know, completely stiff, just playing and just focusing really hard. They probably can't hear things really well. They're not enjoying it, you know, and that's probably because they're not listening to it great. Same thing goes for record. You don't record it with those sounds. By the time you get to the mix stage, you've burnt out your ears.
Yeah.
You can't change it too much. It feels really weird shifting it, even if it sounds bad, right? So I like to get everything as fast as possible. And something that I would do a lot over here was, you know, hey, let's put up 25 mics on a drum kit.
Yeah.
You know, because I'd rather get it now than trying to like force one mic to sound like this other thing that I want to do.
Yeah. And I think over time also, I think that's more something also you did in the earlier stages, and over time you started to get an idea of what sounds good where. So,
Exactly.
you know, over time that can come down to a lower amount of mics.
Absolutely.
Once you know exactly what's happening.
Absolutely. And that's something we did with Ahad's album, who also worked here during the entire time.
Yeah.
Ahad's album, Ahad Hussain, his album had a very unique drum sound itself, and that was the first time we even tried that chamber thing. But I remember it was less than what I recorded last year over here, which was Zambil.
Yeah.
With Alfred on drums.
That was like the kitchen sink approach.
Yeah. And we had a lot of drum pieces on it too, right? As opposed to Arsal's drums on Ahad's album, which was 3 toms, snare, kick. Alfred had 2 snares to begin with.
Yeah.
4 toms, all sorts of cymbals.
Yeah.
Keeping some that we don't even know that we would use.
Yeah.
So not only did I not know the sound, we also were experimenting more. So just put up more. It's like, we'll figure out what we don't want to use, but I'd rather get everything right then. And as I got more confident, we did a lot of drums with Kashmir over here. We did a lot of Cosmic Gulabo recordings over here. That was an entire album on its own.
Yeah.
So I really learned this room. I learned like what a vocal will sound over there as opposed to over here and over here.
Yeah.
You know, besides knowing it obviously in manner of physics, it's something else when you hear it. you have a big selection of mics.
Yeah.
So
Alhamdulillah.
it's very alhamdulillah, and gear and preamps and everything, right? So it was a very challenging thing to be like, okay, what's best for the situation, because
Yeah.
I have like 50 things to choose from. I don't have the time to test it all.
Yeah.
So it was a very experimental process on almost every song,
Yeah.
every album we did.
But the
over
great
there.
thing is, like, once you, with every project, with every recording session, the experience and the learning is cumulative.
Yeah.
So now whenever we do something in the future, you have all of that
Yeah.
informing your decisions. right?
Absolutely, and I like to keep like a small section where I experiment always.
Yeah.
You know, like either it's the chamber mics with drums, or just using a second mic on distance for vocals. You know,
Mm.
sometimes it's moving the mic around.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. I'll try things if I can, because, you know, I definitely have this tendency of like, okay, a mic sounds good here for like the acoustic guitar. Okay, I'm just gonna do that for like a year now.
Mm.
So I started breaking that quite a bit.
Yeah.
Started experimenting more, because it results in like perhaps not the most hi-fi recording at times,
Yeah.
but it gives you a character that would undeniably not be there if I did it.
Yeah,
correct
and
way.
there's a uniqueness that you can get. I mean, it's great how much plugins have evolved, and like nowadays you can get, you know, the neural DSP. You can get so many different kinds of amazing guitar sounds and
Absolutely.
stuff. But you know, I always feel like, especially if it's an album I'm working on, and you know that guitar sound is going to be out there forever. Like especially having these amps available and these rooms and these mics, like I'm always for creating our own sound every time. Like even if we record on the way in with something, with a plug-in just to get it done quickly, you know, I would always rather reamp something just to get a unique flavor.
We actually reamped quite a bit for like a lot of the projects that you produced.
Yeah, like the DA stuff.
Malang Party as well.
And Malang Party. Yeah.
That was great. Like all the tones that we had from the pre-reamping stage
Yeah.
and to like
And it's
afterwards.
great to have like a mix going with that old tone.
Yeah.
And then you do a reamp session and the new tone goes straight into the mix. And you can immediately tell if it's doing something better or not.
Yeah.
And in most cases, we blew away what we were working with before.
We spent our time with it. I remember we had like a few sessions just to get exactly what like you had imagined for those tones.
Yeah, yeah. So how is it working across genres, like switching between, you know, a rock thing to a pop thing, you know, a Tahaji mix to a Kashmir mix? Do you have to recalibrate your ears or your mind, or it's just come second nature to you at this point?
At this point, it's a lot more second nature. I'll say that, but it's also something that's been built into me for years now, right? I started off doing electronic music because I couldn't find a band to make the weird music I wanted to.
Yeah.
I did that. I did a lot of experimental stuff. I did the metal stuff. I did the indie stuff. You know, I've just been exposed to a lot of genres myself.
Yeah.
The older stuff, the newer stuff, all of it. So when I started mixing it, it didn't feel that weird to me. But one thing I will say is that since I was making so much electronic music over the years, that came to me very naturally when I started mixing it. But mixing, say, live drums, vocals, vocals gave me so much hell. Like for years, I was just like, I don't know how to do this. I do not know how to mix vocals. So stuff like that was definitely, it took its time to like develop.
Yeah.
But now, honestly, like it's just like I listen to something, I'll maybe listen to some music before I sit down to mix. Actually, just calibrate my ears to the studio, and just like go on with it. I think it works fine.
Yeah, I mean, do you find that your mixing chains that you come up with in a pop track make their way into your rock mixes and vice versa?
Absolutely, because I've noticed that like I don't really have like a template per se. I just have these routing scale, because all the drums are here, all the basses here, guitars here, vocals here. Instrumental, and then vocals go straight to like outright. So what ends up happening is that it's just where I place things, but the way I actually process them or make them sound is the way I would approach anything else. Okay, here's what I'm listening to. Here's what I'm listening to in context. What does it need? And I'll just start throwing stuff at it if it needs. Sometimes I don't touch it right. Electronic में ये बड़ा फायदा होता है.
There's often things you don't have to touch.
Yeah, because the sound design section of making those sounds is the mixing area. And that's really fun because then I can actually like break sounds further at time or like change them up. When it comes to live music, there's so much cleanup, right?
Yeah.
Right, like just making something not sound raw.
Clean up, polishing,
all of that.
presenting.
Making it bigger, whatever. And then presenting it in its space.
Yeah.
It's a little more involved, I would say. But the approach is still the same. I listen to the sound, I hear it in my head, and then I just chase it.
And I mean, how is like another thing that also came into my mind, like since you've worked on so much stuff, is it, and sometimes something you work on gets hundreds and hundreds of thousands of views, sometimes
millions.
Yeah, sometimes not, doesn't even like go on the radar.
Yeah.
So is it at this point, do you have any sense of being able to tell which one is going to do really well and which one's not?
Definitely. Even and it's almost heartbreaking at times because there's certain songs that I know I love.
Yeah.
That have like really like hit me. And then there's songs that I'm not too enthusiastic about, but I know that they're going to be the ones that are going to be heard way more. They're more accessible, they're more easy listening perhaps, or just are extremely catchy.
And does that then influence the way you would mix something?
No, never, because I mean, this was a problem that I was kind of getting into like years ago, where I was just like, no, people want to hear the vocals too loud, or people want to hear this one thing like this. And I realized that was just boxing me into making my stuff sound like everyone else's.
Right. I mean, to ask the question in a different way, like, so you hear, you may or may not be the tracking engineer, you may not be producing, but when you hear something to mix specifically, and you already get a sense, okay, this is going to be really popular. And then there's something else, maybe in the same album or the same project, that you're like, maybe not so much this one. Is there any thought that comes in at that point to add production or add elements to the one that maybe has less potential to bring it up to that level?
Absolutely, and I think that's like almost like an artistic thing, right? Like I do albums at times, and I'll be like, okay, these 6 songs are great. You mix the first one, you get to the next one, sounds great. Third, fourth, fifth, and then that one song comes up where you're like, it's just not hitting me. It's just not hitting me the way the others have. Sometimes it could be even my fault. Like I just didn't mix it correctly. I took a wrong approach to it. Sometimes it's just something that was missing that we just didn't think about at that time. And I'll discuss with the artist. Sometimes they'll be the ones to be like, hey, that song just doesn't have that thing, like what can we do about it? I'll figure something out if I can in the digital domain at times, because of my electronic music background. Sometimes I'll just pass it on to Ahad or Amar that work with me.
Yeah.
And they're great composers. So they can help them out, whatever works, honestly, because at the end of the day I just want whatever music I put out to be a representation of what that artist wanted.
Yeah. Fair.
So if they enjoy it, fine. If I enjoy it, even better. That's the idea.
So coming to the different part of your work these days, you're playing live with a couple of acts.
Yeah.
How is that going?
It's been hectic and extremely fun, actually. So after like Aleph, like me, Ahad and Amar, we basically have our own studio space now that I'm building from my place. We actually have a name now, Labrat.
Labrat?
So, yeah. We experiment, so we figured why not.
Yeah.
So Labrat is basically what we're doing full time, just producing people, mixing, all of that. But half of the time I'm actually on stage these days, at least 3, 4, maybe even 5 times a month. I'm playing with Maria Nera. She's a great pop act, honestly, like R&B as well, but mainly pop. I've got, and that's a live thing where I'm playing bass. I'm playing with Arsul Raza Shah on drums, Jasser Abro on guitar, and Maria on vocals.
That's a solid musician lineup.
It's a great lineup, and it's really nice to play with them. I learn a lot. And then on the other side, I am DJing / doing backing vocals for Tahaji, because since I co-produce a lot of it and mix so much of it, it was just easy for me to gather all those instrumentation, the loops and whatever, and be able to play them live. And I figured, why not use this as an opportunity to like become a better backing vocalist or a vocalist in general. I've been trying for years now.
Yeah.
So that's been going on well. Taha and Maria both are doing pretty well. They get quite a few shows.
Yeah.
So I get like a nice introvert extrovert balance in that way, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you can
I mean,
isolate
it's good to get
yourself.
out of the lab.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Sinan Fazwani, you know him, right? So
Yeah.
he told me, he's like, okay, now you have your space, you're treating it, but I'm telling you, you haven't worked at home for a while.
Yeah.
Don't work all the time. You will do it. I know you will. Take some time out or it will affect your mental health. And I'm like, yeah, forgot about that.
Yeah.
And because of the shows, I actually don't get enough time in the studio as I used to once upon a time.
I mean, I think that's a good topic to touch on. I mean, as you know, creative people, often we can fall into the downward spiral of, you know, things aren't, sometimes work piles up too much, sometimes we have a couple of bad weeks and we're lagging behind on our deadlines, and then it all piles up. You know, clients are bugging you and constantly trying to call you, but whereas you're not necessarily in the headspace to talk to them or to explain to them something, why you're not delivering anything on time. I mean, how do you manage your emotional and mental health now, and what would you say, you know, is your best advice for people getting into this space, because it is a little bit tricky.
And I've noticed like a lot of people that are in this industry, and not just ours, right? Like a lot of creative stuff that are doing it themselves.
I mean, both of us have faced these issues, and we've seen each other face such issues.
I mean, we've been working for 5 years, 6 years ongoing now, and you know, I've been around you, you've been around me.
Yeah.
I've dealt with those majorly. I have not been able to get out of bed for weeks at a time, with clients calling me, my project open on my computer, and I'm just looking at it, just like shaking my head, like I just can't sit down right now for whatever reason, right?
Yeah.
Takes time, takes effort. I think everybody should talk about it. People should communicate what's going on. I think nowadays, even if you're lagging behind on deadlines, communicating with the artists is very, very helpful, because they understand too now.
Yeah.
Awareness has gone up. I think having a healthy lifestyle is the biggest factor over here.
Absolutely. But I think communication is key. Like, I know with our experience with each other, you know, there have been times in the earlier days where we weren't communicating on that level. It was just a work relationship. But over time, especially with you coming here, that definitely got a lot better. Not to say that issues didn't happen. Sometimes they do happen.
I mean, that's the environment of working in a high emotional like workspace.
Yeah, and with people like me or with Anas, who's equally, you know, very, I would say, a purist and very much, you know, strong vision in terms of what he wants from his music, and similar to me. And you know, working with people like us can be very challenging, you know.
And
I'll
again,
be the first
like,
to admit that.
Again, all artists, I will say,
Yeah.
myself, I'm pretty sure with everyone, there are overlaps of areas where, you know, people are very like, they've put their heart into whatever they're working on. As an engineer or as a producer, mixer, singer, guitarist, whatever, right? So that absolutely happens. Again, communication is the key. I think every issue that has ever come up in my like entire professional career in the past 10, 12 years has boiled down to the fact how well the communication was. I don't remember any projects like turn out. I don't remember like, oh, that song did so well, or like that project sounded so good. What I remember till now is what that relationship was.
Yeah, and how it felt.
Yeah, and
you know.
like, I don't know if you've heard about this. Have you heard about the Mick Gordon controversy going on?
No, tell me.
Oh man, okay, so years ago, he did the Doom soundtrack, right? And like for the entire game, all the music. Then he did the same thing for Doom Eternal. Now what happened that I don't know what words I can use, but it sounded like crap. And it was like a lot of people just got the rumors that, oh no, Mick Gordon screwed it up, he wasn't delivering on time. And oh, you know, like he just got stuck, he wasn't communicating well or whatever.
Yeah.
And I remember this happened like around COVID time when I was dealing with a lot of that myself. And I was just like, oh, damn, it is a very real thing. A lot of people deal with that. But now, turns out, as most corporations and everything is, it wasn't Mick Gordon that was at fault. He put out an open letter with like it's like a Wikipedia page. It has a table of contents.
Oh wow.
He's put down proof. He's presented like receipts, everything.
Yeah.
I did the
I
work.
did my bit.
These guys kind of pushed me in these corners, which allowed their product to go like downhill.
Yeah.
And now they're going all legal, I bet.
Oh, okay. Wow.
But that's another side of the reality, right? Like, sometimes it's one party that's like making it a mess. Yes, sometimes another party's making it a mess. But using this whole factor, okay, no, artists like can be professional at times, and you know, as much as that is a reality, I've also seen people use that as an advantage to like slander people when they're at fault. And that happens here as well. There are a lot of decent producers out there that you know, I'll hear every now and then, oh, he's not reliable, and then I hear from this guy that they've made their life hell,
Yeah.
and that's why slowly the relationship disintegrated.
Yeah.
Again, communication is key. You know, expectations versus what's possible.
I think, again, communication of expectations, specifically being clear from the get-go on what you're being hired for, what is expected from you on what timeline, or just if you think that's unreasonable or is too much, it's, you know, to being clear with
Absolutely.
with the person on, you know, this is what I can deliver in this time, and beyond that is, you know,
something that actually like I ended up doing because of all that was become a managerial, I don't know, like I became really like,
I mean, one of the things you brought to Aleph was that organizing things kind of mindset, like, you know, using different softwares to keep track of projects.
Yeah, basically built an entire management system for all of us.
Yeah.
It was important because I realized, you know, I may have days where I can't schedule everything for everyone. I might have days where I just need to look at everything and not remember anything.
Yeah.
And that's something I will always suggest to producers and artists, like, start writing things down more.
Yeah.
I see you with your diary all the time. You know,
it helps a lot.
It helps so much. You don't remember everything.
Pre-diary me and post-diary.
It's a different
like
person. It's a totally different person. Like, it's very important. If I didn't do that, I think I would be struggling with communication because I wouldn't be communicating with myself.
Yeah.
You know, that's why I write it down, because when on a later date, when I haven't thought about it, and I read it, I'm like, oh, what was this?
Yeah.
And you know,
especially when you're doing stuff like, you know, essentially we are freelancers, we are, you know, even when you're working here, the setup was very much of a freelancer type approach, as opposed to top down being told what to do, you know. So when you have that much freedom and creative liberty, then you have ideas all the time, and it's really hard to keep track of things. And plus you're working on multiple projects,
a lot of them
at any given point, you know.
At least like 30-35 songs at a given moment in a pipeline. So it gets overwhelming, it's exhausting, and you know, when one thing goes wrong, there's a big domino effect that can happen between like 7 different clients. And that's not fair to either of them, right? So it's my responsibility at that time. Okay, so not only am I supposed to deliver at a time, I have a team that I'm usually working with. Things keep changing, you know, like schedules change. This country it's not easy to work here. Like,
it isn't.
Me getting out of where I live, which is Gulistan-e-Johar.
There's so many days don't make it to work because it's like raining or it's like there's some protest happening.
And it's a reality that everybody faces. So it all boils down to the same thing: communication. And that is where I see most people lacking. Including myself. That was a big part of like my own thing. But now I'm like, okay, I got a message, just respond to it, move on, don't wait.
I mean, that's something I think I've also got better at. Like I used to just park messages. Okay, I just can't deal with this right now. And then now I just tell them I'm busy for the next XYZ. You know, I'll get back to you and whenever. But coming back to some audio stuff, like, so it's a little bit different for me because lately I've been doing more mixing work for clients. But for the most part, I mix for myself, for my own projects. And the challenge with that is knowing when it's done, because it can always get better, right? Man. So how do you make that line? Obviously, with clients, it's a little different. There's a deadline, or once they're happy, then it's pretty much okay. But when do you know a mix is done?
So It's difficult because if it's my own music, I can't get into the record like, no, this one thing is such a big problem
Yeah.
because this I'm so close to the music or whatever. Or sometimes I'm producing for too long, you know. If
Yeah.
I produce a track that took like 7 different recording sessions and I sat in on all of them, I don't know what to do by the time I'm sitting to mix.
Yeah.
Zulfikar Jabbar Khan, he actually has, I think he mentioned something similar where by the time he gets to the mixing stage, he's very exhausted creatively.
Yeah.
So when it comes to mixing my own stuff or like a band that I'm a part of, either I want to move really quickly, and that can be dirty as well, like guerrilla style almost. Doesn't matter, don't name tracks, just quickly do this, move on, get to the next stage and just, you know, get it out there.
Yeah.
And at times I can very happily rely on those around me. Nakaposh is a great thing that I've like got to mix a few times, and my bandmates, my partners, they're amazing at that, you know. They want what they want, and
Yeah, and they're good to point out things.
And they have a very similar like sonic vision to what I have with that band. So I trust them. I go like, hey, is the snare too loud? Is it like not sounding good? Is it weird? Whatever, right? And they can tell me. At times I have to make that judgment call myself. I set deadlines for myself. I set deadlines for clients. They set it for us as well, right?
Yeah.
That can at times be it for me. If a song doesn't sound good to me and everybody that is telling me that it sounds good, I have to trust them at times.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask, is it the case ever that you know, something is approved or finished where it's in a state where you're not sure if it was done and you just decide to call it quits because the client is happy enough?
Yes and no. That does happen at times where I just feel like I didn't get where I wanted to with a song or something, but it doesn't happen as much now because I work much faster than I ever did, right?
Yeah, I mean, you get better as an engineer as you go.
And I get to like if a mix doesn't sound right, I'll just redo it. I'll just start from scratch.
Actually, that's something I've started doing.
It helps a lot. Like,
because
just
often
go
you
from
get like,
scratch.
I've worked so much on this mix, and now I just screw it. Just start from
Just throw it in the band. Start from scratch. It helps so much. It's like it just refreshes everything.
Yeah.
And sometimes I just go like, okay, I've done the basics, right? Can I hear things? Yes. People are saying that they are responding to it emotionally. All right, that's good. Do I feel depth in it? Yes. Can it be better? Obviously. Yeah. Can I change everything if I like spend like 2 more days on it? Probably not. So it's okay. I can move on. Yeah. And at times it's not my fault. Sometimes the song just doesn't mix that well.
Yeah. Like I mean, it's not been produced or recorded.
Sometimes it hasn't been composed to be mixed well. Yeah. You know, and maybe the song sounds cool, but mix-wise it's a challenge.
Yeah, too many competing elements in spots.
Yeah, and stuff. Sometimes, as I said, you cut your losses and you're like, okay, sounds fine. People are enjoying it to an extent. Yeah. That's what's possible. Because if we started sitting on songs, then I know I'm guilty of this with my own music. Just 6 years of demos. Yeah. Right?
I'm super guilty with
like
my
just
own
hard
stuff.
drives filled up with songs that have great potential, and I still know that if I just go put it out there, it'll be over with.
Yeah, and it'll probably also do decently enough, but you're just not, you know.
Yeah, high standards, and I think like they pull us back quite a bit. Like a lot of creative individuals get pulled back by that. Something I learned from Tahaji a lot is that he writes almost every other day. I haven't seen anyone that works as hard in writing the amount of songs that he does. And he has so many that he just discards because they don't sound good, and that's fine. He moves on. He doesn't just keep trying to...
Yeah, I mean, writing itself is a muscle that you need to, like, exercise.
Absolutely.
As, you know, which I don't think people who call themselves writers do enough around, you know. But obviously, so, as the more that you've learned about mixing, I mean, for me, it's definitely been the case that it's informed my music arrangement sensibility.
Definitely.
Because I would say, like, for example, with the DA method, we would often put a lot of layers in, not necessarily thinking about the mix. You know, that's the mixer's job to figure it out. But now it's like, okay, I know that synthesizer and that guitar or that vocal are going to clash, right? So, you know, try to work your way around that while doing the arrangement. So how important do you think it is to have a working knowledge of mixing for the arrangers and songwriters in bands or projects?
This is something that I like would teach my students a lot. It's like, okay, you want to do this thing that is not in the later stages of the thing that you're working on, whether it's a film, whether it's a game, whether it's music, right? Even for video guys, I would say, if somebody wants to shoot well, I think they should try to color grade as well. If somebody edits well, they should try to direct, vice versa.
Yeah.
Because what ends up happening is, like an audio film, I would learn how to record Foley, for example. Then whoever I would pass that recorded Foley to, the editor would be like, okay, you made mistakes here, here, and here. And then when I became a Foley editor, I was able to see that, and that made my judgment on recording and performing it better.
Yeah.
Same thing happened when I started mixing stuff. My edits started getting better. When I started mastering stuff, started mixing better. So I think it goes all the way back.
Absolutely.
It goes all the way back to the composition and your playing.
Yeah.
It informs the entire process. It's a big butterfly / domino effect.
Yeah, I mean, I think my, strangely enough, doing more mixing has made me a better guitar player.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I'm playing more precisely. I know, okay, things will need to be edited, so I'm more, thinking of that, more cognizant of listening to the click now than I ever was before, or even with the reference to drums or whatever is going on.
The way it becomes a second nature to you.
Yeah,
I understand that. And that is kind of how I became every, audio thing that I do now.
Yeah.
Is because I started playing with this extremely crappy, 6,000 rupee bass that I would plug using those 1/4 inch to 8 inch jacks straight into the PC mic port.
Oh.
And Audacity and distortion.
The Audacity of
option, distortion, click, okay, apply, that kind of distortion being used.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, oh, that doesn't sound like Justin Chancellor. What do? Do I need that pedal? Do I need that bass? Whatever. Eventually, I started realizing most of the things I would chase is very simple, basic stuff.
Yeah.
I just need to know a lot of different steps to get the best of what I'm trying to do at times.
Yeah.
And that is a journey that I think will happen for me for the rest of my life. Right now I'm not producing vocals as much, so maybe that skill is maybe diminishing. So I'll do that a bit more so I can advise perhaps the singers that will be recording or whatever later. It would help, when I recorded Ad for vocals, staying informed of how to record allowed me to tell him beforehand for weeks, okay, you need to warm up with this stuff, with that stuff.
Yeah, you need to
mic,
avoid smoking.
All of that, right?
Yeah.
So it informs everything, backwards and forwards.
Yeah. And just as one of the final things I want to ask about is, do you prefer someone else mastering your mixes, or do you like mastering your mixes?
It's the same thing. If I'm in the band, if I'm playing the music, I prefer somebody else mixing it. If I'm mixing it, I'd prefer somebody else mastering it. Same thing. It's the same.
Yeah, I mean, it's a different. It's a different area. Plus, even though you know the skill set, it's often you want to be primarily focusing on the one thing.
Absolutely.
For example, the mixing.
Absolutely. And in an ideal situation, this comes from a film background thing, right? In film post-production and audio, you have a pretty large team. You have the Foley performers, that can be up to 1 or 2 people at a time, the recorder, the editor. Sometimes, they will share some of those responsibilities, but the delegations are as follows. You've got the sound effects editors, that means the background editors and the sound effects that are going to be in there. Then there's going to be the dialogue editors. There's going to be music editorial, which is just a different thing, They grab music and then they place it within the film. The film mixers are usually 2 people at a time. Not these days as much, but there can be 2 people at a time mixing the same film, side by side. So that's a large team, right?
Yeah.
But look at films; they're extremely complex pieces of sound. At times more than
extremely
music for
complex pieces of coordination.
Yeah. So I feel like if it's divided, and people get to focus on what they're doing, good communication, good leadership, things can be bigger than any one individual's work. But it's hard. It's hard to communicate. It's hard to work with like-minded individuals. It's hard to work with people who are skilled at something, just specifically one thing. There's a lot more jack of all trades right now than master of one.
Yeah.
But I'd still say it's better than master of none.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, definitely.
So I think it's nice that like it can get divided.
Absolutely. I mean, and just like you said, communication, mutual respect,
Mhm.
these things can get you a long way in terms of getting the most out of a unit.
And I remember like I was very apprehensive of somebody mastering my stuff earlier on. You've mastered a few things that I've done as well.
Yeah, and I always enjoyed that.
Irfan's Ibn Adam, I believe, and Naqab that we did last year.
Kaposh, maybe a couple of other things. Yeah.
Mahal got mastered by, what was his name? I forget. I don't want to butcher it.
I also forget the name, but he's mastered like Mammal Hands and some really great
Yeah,
stuff.
he's a very, very nice mastering engineer. And Tom Waltz and all that, like other
Yeah.
mastering engineers that managed to like
Yeah.
master some of the mixes that I've done. I've been very happy with that, and
Yeah.
it feels a big load off my shoulders because even if it sounds to what my test master was, now I know that my test master was okay, and this is the best representation of my mix right now.
Absolutely.
So if I could, I would honestly just throw all my mixes at another mastering engineer,
Yeah, same to be honest.
and I would be happy to master everybody else's mixes as well.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Yeah. But no, it's been lovely having you.
Thank you so much,
and
man.
Geeking out a little bit on
Never get to do
audio
this.
stuff.
Yeah.
I hope you guys found it useful, and please follow Adeel Tahir. Do you have any pages for
So
LabRat?
LabRat is coming up right now. We still have to do our like social media and everything, but
Yeah.
yeah, soon definitely. But like I worked with Hussain and Amar Khalid, so I think just follow
Yeah.
all of them.
Yeah, follow all of them and watch out for some new stuff coming from these guys. And do tune in next time. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, and help us spread.